There is a forest in southern Minnesota that should not still be here. Almost every acre of woodland around it was cut, burned, and turned under the plow more than a century ago. Yet on this trail, the old trees still close over your head, and the light goes soft and green. This is Nerstrand Big Woods, one of the last living pieces of a forest that once seemed endless. Walk in with me and let the quiet fold over you. We are in Rice County, near the small town of Nerstrand, about an hour south of the Twin Cities. The park sits on gently rolling farm country, a dark island of timber in a sea of open fields. A creek called Prairie Creek threads through it, cutting a shallow valley toward a hidden waterfall. The trails here are short and easy, but the story under your feet runs deep. Let me show you why this particular patch of trees matters so much. Notice how the trunks rise straight and gray before the first branches spread. These are sugar maples and basswoods, oaks and elms, the hardwoods that thrive in rich, deep soil. In summer, their leaves knit into a canopy so dense that the forest floor stays cool and dim. Little wind reaches down here, and sound seems to travel differently. You are walking through the interior of a true northern hardwood forest. Because these trees are the last remnant of the big woods. For thousands of years, a broad band of dense hardwood forest covered much of south-central Minnesota. It ran like an irregular belt from the pine country of the northeast down toward the grasslands of the southwest. The belt stretched roughly 100 miles long and in places nearly 40 miles wide. To the people who lived beneath it, this was simply the Great Thick Forest. Feel how the temperature drops as the canopy thickens overhead. A closed hardwood forest makes its own weather, holding moisture and shade through the hottest days. Spring here is a race, when wildflowers bloom and fade before the leaves shut out the sun. Summer is deep shade, and autumn sets the maples on fire with color. Each season, the forest keeps the same slow, patient rhythm it has kept for centuries. The names people gave this forest tell you how it felt to stand inside it. The Dakota called it Siwith-Databava Eng letter 1E61 OKE, meaning the thick woods. When French speakers arrived in the 1600s, they named the timbered country the Bois Grand, the Big Woods. By some estimates, the forest once covered more than 3,000 square miles. That single English name, the Big Woods, is the one that stuck. Look down at the ground you are crossing. Beneath the fallen leaves lies some of the richest soil in the region, built up over thousands of years of decaying wood and leaf. That fertility was the forest's blessing and, in the end, its undoing. Soil this good was exactly what arriving farmers wanted most. The very richness that grew these giant trees is what doomed the forest around them. The Big Woods was what botanists call a maple and basswood forest. Sugar maple and American basswood dominated the canopy, mixed with elm, oak, ironwood, and ash. These are trees that tolerate deep shade and can grow up beneath their own parents. Left alone, such a forest renews itself endlessly, one generation rising as the last one falls. That is why the interior feels so ancient and self-contained. The trail bends and the trees keep their steady company on either side. Trails like this one are gentle, well-shaded, and easy to follow. In wet seasons, parts of the park can close when Prairie Creek floods and the paths turn to mud. But on a clear autumn day like this, the walking is a pleasure. Every turn opens another quiet corridor of trunks. The people who cleared this country came mostly from Norway. In the fall of 1856, a Norwegian immigrant named Osmund Osmundson settled on land here in Wheeling Township. He built a farm, and in 1877 he founded the town of Nerstrand with a general store and a post office. The name itself was carried across the ocean from a place back in Norway. Around him grew a close-knit Norwegian-American farming community. Just beyond these trees, the land opens into farm fields that stretch to the horizon. For the settlers, forest like this was both a resource and an obstacle. The timber gave them fuel, fences, and lumber, but the ground beneath it promised crops. So the axes came, and the big woods began to fall. Field by field, the great forest was cleared away. Across southern Minnesota, the transformation was almost total. In a matter of decades, thousands of square miles of hardwood forest were cut down and converted to farmland. What had been an unbroken canopy became a checkerboard of plowed fields and scattered woodlots. The big woods did not retreat slowly. It was dismantled. By the early 1900s, only fragments of the original forest remained standing. And this was one of those fragments. The tract that became the park had never been fully cleared or plowed. Some of it had been logged, but the forest structure survived, and the great trees kept growing. As the surrounding country turned to farmland, this shaded woodland grew rare and precious. People began to realize that a piece of the vanished big woods was still here. Saving it was not simple, and it did not happen quickly. Through the 1930s and into the 1940s, local citizens and state lawmakers pushed to preserve the Nerstrand woods. They argued that this was the last sizable remnant of the big woods worth protecting. It took years of proposals, meetings, and legislative effort to move the idea forward. The community would not let the last of the forest quietly disappear. Because of that effort, the ground you walk today is protected land. It is easy to forget, on so peaceful a path, that its survival was ever in doubt. Every mature tree around you stands here by a deliberate human choice. Someone decided this forest was worth more standing than felled. That decision is why the trail exists at all. The turning point came in the spring of 1945. On the 28th of March, the legislature approved the bill creating the state park. A few days later, Governor Edward J. Thye signed it into law. Of the 460 acres first designated, 100 were set aside for the park and the rest for forestry research. In 1992, the park was renamed Nerstrand Big Woods State Park. Now the trail begins to slope, tilting us down toward the valley of Prairie Creek. You can sense the land falling away and the air growing a little cooler and damper. Water has shaped everything about this lower ground. Somewhere ahead, the creek has carved down through the layers of the earth itself. Follow the slope and listen for moving water. Prairie Creek is the quiet heart of this park. It winds through the woods in a shallow valley, gathering rain and snowmelt from the surrounding hills. In dry weeks, it is a gentle trickle, but a heavy storm or a spring thaw can send it rushing. Over long ages, that patient flow has cut down through soil and stone, and where it drops over a hard ledge, it makes something worth walking to see. As we come nearer, you can hear it before you see it. The creek narrows, quickens, and spills through a tight cleft in the valley. This is the destination that draws visitors in every season. In winter, it freezes into pale columns of ice, and in spring thaw, it roars. Round the next bend, and the water reveals itself. This is Hidden Falls, the small waterfall that gives the park its signature view. Prairie Creek pours about 20 feet over a shelf of limestone into the pool below. It is tucked into the woods, easy to reach yet genuinely hidden until you are almost upon it. The falls change character with the weather, tranquil under a gentle rain, dramatic in high water. For many hikers, this modest cascade is the whole reason they came. Stand a moment at the edge and watch the water fold over the ledge. The rock beneath the fall is the reason the waterfall exists at all. Softer material has worn away, while this harder stone holds firm and forms the lip. Every drop that goes over is slowly cutting the ledge backward, upstream. You are watching a landscape rewrite itself, one thin sheet of water at a time. The stone that makes the falls is called Platteville Limestone. It formed from the floor of a warm, shallow sea that covered this region hundreds of millions of years ago. Buried and hardened over enormous stretches of time, it now sits as a firm layer beneath the park. Prairie Creek has exposed it right here, at the lip of the waterfall. What looks like an ordinary ledge is a page from an impossibly old book. Look at the shape of the little valley the creek has cut. The land here is built in almost flat layers, one stacked upon another. On top lies rich forest soil, and below it, thick deposits left behind by glaciers. Beneath all of that rests the ancient limestone at the bottom. The creek is the knife that has sliced down through the whole stack. Above the old bedrock lies the work of the Ice Age. Great glaciers once ground across this region, leaving behind a thick blanket of clay, sand, and stone. In places, that glacial layer is well over 100 feet deep. It buried the ancient limestone and shaped the gentle, rolling hills you see today. Only where the creek has cut through does the buried stone come back into the light. There is one more secret in this forest, and it hides down among these leaves. For most of the year, the ground looks ordinary, brown, and quiet. But this soil holds one of the rarest wildflowers in all of North America. It is a tiny plant, easy to overlook, that grows almost nowhere else on Earth. To understand why this forest is so fiercely protected, you have to meet it. It is called the dwarf trout lily, and it is found only in a few Minnesota counties and nowhere else in the world. The flower is smaller than a dime, pale pink, nodding on a slender stem. It blooms for just a short window, roughly from mid-April into May, then vanishes for the year. Strangely, it almost never sets seed. Instead, it spreads underground by runners, slowly cloning itself across the forest floor. Think about how fragile that makes it. A plant that rarely makes seed cannot easily spread to new ground or bounce back from disaster. It survives in this one small corner of the world by clinging to exactly these conditions. The shade, the moist soil, and the undisturbed forest floor are everything to it. Lose this habitat and you could lose the entire species. Science first noticed the little lily long ago. It was found near Faribault, not far from here, around 1870. A local teacher sent a specimen to the botanist Asa Gray at Harvard, who recognized it as something new. It had been growing quietly in these woods all along, unknown to the wider world. From that small collected flower, the dwarf trout lily entered the scientific record. That rarity is why parts of this park are so carefully managed. Boardwalks like this one lift your feet above the delicate ground. They let people come close to the flowers without ever trampling the colonies. Along Prairie Creek, work has even been done to keep floodwaters from washing the plants away. Protection here is not a slogan, it is hands-on and constant. In 1986, the dwarf trout lily was listed as a federally endangered species. Its numbers have fallen at many of the sites where it was once counted. Deer browsing, erosion, and competing plants all press against it. Every colony that survives inside this forest is a small victory against extinction. When you walk gently here, you are part of keeping it alive. Now in autumn, the big woods puts on its finest show. The sugar maples turn to gold and orange, and the light through them glows warm. Leaves drift down across the trail in a slow, unhurried fall. In a few weeks, the canopy will be bare and the forest will settle toward winter. But today it is all color and quiet. exactly the way this forest has looked for centuries. We have walked through the last of a forest that once covered thousands of square miles. We stood at a hidden waterfall, read the stone beneath it, and met a flower that lives nowhere else on Earth. Nerstrand Big Woods survives because people chose again and again to protect it. Carry a little of its quiet with you and let it remind you what is worth saving. Thank you for watching. Follow for more of the trails of the world.